You've pressed the red button. Now, here's something of no value.
Stewart, who told you you were funny?
I think that it's just something that you know. A lot of people
Has anyone told you you're funny?
Not to my face. I mean, I see things written on walls.
No one
and
has
stuff.
told you you're funny?
Not to my face. I see things written on walls. But I mean, it's a question that comedians are often asked. When did you realise you're funny? A lot of comedians say that they started trying to be funny to escape bullying. But I actually was the bully, and I found that if I could add verbal abuse to the physical abuse that I dealt out to people, it would be much more effective and crushing to them.
So you were like the Joker?
Yeah, in Batman, in many ways, yeah. Like the Joker in Batman, or one of those, or or any of the other supervillains that are based on comedy concepts. The Riddler as well. Another. My plan all along has been to establish myself, first of all, as a comedian, to get the funny part right, and then to somehow move that into superpowered crime at a later date. And if I could raise a city to the ground or destroy a bank or kidnap loads of orphans, but if I could do that at the same time as it being funny, that to me would be the kind of... I think where the people like the Joker went wrong is because the Joker was a criminal before he was tried to be funny.
Yeah. But the thing is, though, that you're not funny.
No, I mean, it's become evident to me watching the programme. I mean, as I watch the rushes, I can see why people would not think I'm funny and why they would be bored. And I'm glad in a way that I've managed to do this series after 20 years of trying to be a comedian, because I've realised that it's not something I'm cut out for, but I think I can just about get away with it enough that when I move into crime, the sort of residue of comedy that I can take with me will give me a little bit of an edge as a career criminal.
Okay, so are you hoping that, because we're now near the end of the series now, are you hoping that the more it underperforms, because it has underperformed in a way that I couldn't have imagined. I was expecting great things, and I was...
you were expecting it to pick up and then fade away, but actually the audience figures just tailed off like a shelf.
I came in with high expectations, and then they went, you are, to use a technical, you are an anticipantment.
Yeah.
I'm anticipated in you.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you now planning that the decline of your reputation that this series has marked out will force you into to become an outlaw or some sort of shadowy figure?
A masked figure of hate.
Figure.
Yeah, and I don't know exactly what form those crimes will take, but certainly the degree of violence involved in them will be informed by the level of rejection I felt from the broadcasting industry and the British public. And
will you have a costume?
I will have a costume, yeah.
What kind of costume do you?
Well, it'll be exactly this, but it will be much tighter, and not in a flattering way either. It will be every single unsightly bulge or the very worst aspects of my body will be emphasised by it, and in the places like my left leg where I have permanent scarring from cellulitis, that will be exposed. So I'll look like a kind of squashed, diseased figure, bringing a bitterness and resentment and feeling of rejection to my victims, and people will see me, and I'll just have the centre of my face cut out in the with a tiny, like little strip along there, and they'll just about be able to recognise me, but not well enough. They might think that I'm Terry Christian or Mark Lamar or Roland Gift from the Fine Young Cannibals or Edwyn Collins or Ray Liotta, or an overweight version of any of those. And while they're confused about who I am, that will buy me the time to strike with absolutely deadly accuracy at them. And while I harm them, I will also be delivering a withering verbal put-down of the kind that I have lashed audiences with in late-night comedy club gigs for the last 2 decades.
And on your chest, would you have SL for Stewart Lee or SDF or squashed, diseased figure?
I'd have none of those things. I would have a picture of a tomato with half of it like rotted away, and then its face kind of caving in.
Now, is there not a danger, if that was the case and you were spotted leaving the scene of a crime or whatever, and that they saw this, that you would be known as semi-rotten tomato boy?
So be it, you know. So be it. I mean, that the naming aspect is not of interest to me. The main thing is that the underperformance of the show has left me with a feeling of bitterness towards the world, and I'm reckless as to what I do to spite it.
Okay. If you were this crime-causing masked figure, would you commit crimes on other comedians? Would you break into Frank Skinner's house?
If they got in my way, I mean, I think someone like Frank Skinner is very interested in his legacy, and I think what he would try and do was, if there was a former comedian who was now a criminal, he would probably try and become a superhero comedian to stop them. So I think that there's every chance that we could see him injecting himself with some kind of serum or subjecting himself to the bite of a radioactive creature in the hope that he would take on his powers. My warning to him, if he's watching, is that he should choose carefully what creature that is, because there's no telling how the powers may manifest themselves.
Yes, because if he took on the powers of a ladybird, for example, I mean, that's not going to be that scary, is it?
Particularly not the traditional English ladybird at the moment, which has been decimated by the French and the American ladybird that's coming in.
Like squirrels. Would you join forces with any other super criminal comedians?
Really, I'd be looking for someone who feels embittered. You know, I don't know who that would be. Roy Walker, maybe.
Have you and Roy?
It's not been discussed yet, but I did see him. I saw him getting out of a cab in Edinburgh last summer near the George Hotel. And there was something about the way that he looked at me like that, which suggested that he had the idea of a degenerate supervillain comedian team-up on his mind, but hadn't thought how best to articulate that. And it's certainly something I'll be following up.
Have you ever had your penis caught in a zip?
I don't think so, but...
is it possible that if you'd have more success as a comedian?
Well, you know, I mean, you need stuff to happen to you, and this is one of the points I'm trying to make in the show. I haven't had my penis caught in a zip. You know, I haven't seen girls with big breasts. I haven't had a homosexual encounter or any of those things. And that by the time I got to filming the end of this series, I've written and I talked about everything that's ever happened to me, and I need some experiences. And I think, I mean, maybe the comedy is something I can come back to after the crimes. You know, if I'm wounded or harmed in some way, ideally in the buttocks or the genitals, which of course are the prime areas for humour of the human body.
Now, you had a real go at the Americans in that show. I mean, some of it was like really near the knuckle with all the American stuff. But we've sold the rights of this show to America.
Yeah.
Who would you like to play Stewart Lee in the American version of Stewart Lee's comedy vehicle, USA?
Janine Garofalo. Yeah.
From Larry Sanders.
Larry Sanders.
Yeah. Looking like you, or
no,
looking
really,
like her?
No. And as a woman.
As a woman, yeah.
I think that could give it a spin it needs.
But we can get her.
Oh, right.
We've got Jodie Foster.
That'd be fine. Okay. Yeah. I mean, she's very versatile.
Is she? I've never seen her do comedy, but
Well,
but then neither have I seen you do comedy either.
Yeah.
Where do you get your ideas from? Is it a ditch?
No, it's from, I get old the Goodies books that they used to put out.
Goodies Book of Records.
Goodies Book of Records, Goodies Book of Disaster Movies.
Yes.
And they get the ideas from there and just change the nouns a bit. Yeah.
And that somehow hasn't worked?
No, nonetheless, no. I mean, I don't know at whose feet to lay the blame.
The feet of Oddie, Garden and Taylor.
They're 6 feet.
Yeah. There was a lot of stuff we had to cut from the shows, which was you riding around on a tricycle on your own.
Alone, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Well, I missed the point that 3 people on a 3-seater bike, funny. One man, it just creates a feeling of loneliness. No one wants to see that.
Do you want to talk about the Apple sketch?
Well, the problem with the Apple sketch is that, like, at the point where it was supposed to stop, when Gail Brand came in and played the trombone, they just started messing around and running around the studio, and everyone like was trying to stop them.
I know.
Just out of control, and it looks idiotic. And it's
a call went up the chain of command, right up to the Director General's office, saying we've got a sketch. It's gone out of control, and nothing can stop it.
But I mean, now I understand that very strong measures have been put in place to stop that ever happening again. Also, it's just such a waste of apples. One of the things that was great about doing the series was I was able to sort of choose people that I wanted to have on for warm-ups, the acts that go on when there's breakdowns in transmission, or try and get the audience going. And I was able to use one of my favourite acts, which is Stephen Carlin. He's a Scottish guy. I toured with him for about 4 months in 2005. I think he's really brilliant. He has the kind of dry, sophisticated, elegant and beautifully written material that has no place on television. So it's going to be a real treat for you to see something this good, I think. He's unique amongst comics, really, in that he's able to talk about sport without seeming like an ignorant lout. He knows his way around politics and popular culture. And he's also something of an engineering expert. On a long road trip between gigs in Edinburgh and Aberdeen, Steve was able to take me along a road which is known amongst engineers for having the worst adverse camber in Britain. It's that kind of intelligence and attention to detail that he's also brought to bear on his work. Ladies and gentlemen, some highlights from the warm-up offcuts of Stephen Carlin.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. It's lovely to be in this. This is a beautiful room, as Stewart said. It is a big improvement on my first ever gig, got to say. My first performance, I don't know if you know, it's probably, I haven't heard, but it was 5 years old actually, my first gig as such. It was a school nativity play, and I played the part of Joseph in my school nativity, Joseph Stalin. So, unfortunately, I was a bit of a method actor in those days. That's right, so one or two of my classmates did die. Needlessly. But anyway, let's not dwell on the crimes of Joseph Stalin this evening. Probably the deaths of 20 million people, not an appropriate start for Stewart Lee's comedy vehicle. You know, keep it nice and light and upbeat. So thought just instead I'd just kick off by starting to talk about hurricanes in America. Because probably like me, you have been looking forward to the new hurricane season in America. Not specifically for the destruction that will be unleashed. I think primarily just to see which names the Americans are going to give their hurricanes this year. Because see what you like about the Americans, they do love to name hurricanes. And I think, you know, things like Hurricane Hannah, Hurricane Ike, I think fair play to them. That's good customer service, nice personal touch, because we don't bother naming weather systems in Britain at all, do we? Not in Britain, we tend to say things like, oh, yeah, you remember those high winds? That time. But I think the worst thing about American culture must surely be America's over-reliance on superheroes instead of more conventional emergency services. I've known this for quite a few years, actually, because you might recall the Buncefield fuel depot fire. A few years ago, the fuel depot in Hemel Hempstead went on fire. It was the largest fire in post-Second World War Europe. Explosion could be heard in France. What do we do in Britain? We got the fire brigade to put that out using foam. Yeah, very good. Now, very similar situation occurred, you might recall, in the documentary Superman 3. When an oil refinery caught fire, and what did the Americans do? What was their approach? Well, they thought somehow it would be a good idea, firstly, to get Superman to fly to a lake, then to get him to freeze that lake with his breath by blowing on it, then to pick up his one sheet of ice, right, with no regard to any of the wildlife living in that lake whatsoever, to pick up the ice, fly to the refinery with it, drop it on the fire. Now, I must have been only about 7 years old, I reckon, when I seen that movie, and even I knew at that age that you don't put water on an oil fire. Wait, what was the correct approach? What should Superman correctly have done? Well, Superman should have got himself a giant tea towel the size of an oil refinery, so I reckon something in the dimensions of about 3 miles by 3 miles ought to do the trick. Dip that in the lake, lift it out, wring it so it's damp, but not dripping wet. So follow the guidelines. Then to carefully place that over the oil refinery, thus smothering the flames. But I suppose the concept of a giant tea towel was just ruled out by the producers as being too ridiculous, too far-fetched, and too unbelievable, even for a Superman film. So I think that's the moment when Superman and I parted company, to be honest with you. I don't like Superman anymore. Don't like the man, because I'll tell you why. He's reactive, he's not proactive. Superman wouldn't do very well in today's business world, let me tell you. He's been flounder at his 6-month appraisal, gets slapped down. Because his whole approach is, you wait until something goes drastically wrong, and people's lives are in threat, and then he thinks that would be a good point to spring into action, to do something about not at all interested in that whole key preventative side of the emergency business. I mean, basically my ideal Superman film would be a film in which there was no one in danger, in which there was no one in peril, in which there were no rescues, just 2.5 hours of Superman touring like a succession of factories and then handing out health and safety advice. My favourite drink of choice is whiskey. I like Scotch whiskey, a national drink. I like the way it makes you feel a bit dizzy after a few. You start banging into bits of furniture. Yeah, I like the way that it makes you a bit indiscreet. You start making 1 or 2 inappropriate remarks. I like the way that at 3 a.m, you can be standing at a bar with a complete stranger discussing how tomorrow you will set up a company together. And let me tell you, I used to be a Marks and Spencer's skeptic, okay? I didn't used to believe in Marks and Spencer's as a shop. I didn't think it offered anything for me, but I found out recently that Marks and Spencer's sell whiskey in cans. That's right, Marks and Spencer's, for all places, sell whiskey in metal cans. Basically, it's like a Red Bull can with whiskey in it and then mixed with ginger ale. Ideal for that busy alcoholic on the move. Or if you like drinking whiskey but feel that drinking out a glass just has too much inherent dignity.